XVM stands for the intersection of virtualization and management. And X is just a cooler letter than I, so we used it instead.
I is so overused.
IBM would sound like it was Apple or something. So one of the things that you have to understand when you get into this is there's Zen Server, which is Citrix's commercial product which uses Zen technology, which is going to be 5.0, and I think that's based on a build of the Zen open source code, which is something like 3.1. We are on a very recent version of the Zen source code, although not the newest bleeding edge version. And we're going to be pretty aggressive about keeping up with Zen, but we're not always going to put in the most bleeding version. So we're going to basically, big.
So it's a qualifying no.
Yeah. So we're not. I don't think we're going to be on the same version as them. I actually don't know which version they're on though,
Well, that's fine.
for their commercial product. But we aren't on the. I think 3.2 is what they just announced from the open source community,
Yeah.
and we've actually been working with that, but it's not going to be in the first release of XVM Server. So we spent a lot of time talking about x86 today, and I'm going to be honest, we were very conscious about focusing on x86 because no one believes we're doing it. When we say I'm doing a generic x86 hypervisor to run Windows, we've been telling people that for a few months, and they say, no, you mean it's for Solaris and Spark. You work at Sun Microsystems, right? So we really wanted to get across to people that this is, we're not playing a hat game here saying we're really serious about virtualization, but we're only doing it in our own pool. So Sun does have an existing really enterprise class hypervisor for Spark called the Logical Domains. And we're now putting functions into Op Center. The shipping version now has a set of functions for this, and we're enhancing it all the time to manage logical domains, as well as Solaris containers, which is another one of our native technologies. So that chart that Amy put up earlier kind of had Op Center in the center of a lot of Sun's technologies. It's being used to manage all of that. And what you're going to see over time is some of those pre-existing virtualization technologies like logical domains and containers become more and more integrated into the XVM portfolio, give you a single point to manage all of those, both physical and virtual servers from within Op Center, and Op Center is a big linkage point for that. In terms of the instruction set, virtualization or emulation, we certainly talk about that, and stay tuned, maybe you'll see something. Can I migrate a VirtualBox virtual machine and run it in XVM Server? The answer is yes. You can also take a VMware virtual machine and you can run it inside XVM Server. So one of the things that we did was we made a choice to standardize first on VMDK as our standard virtual hard disk format. It's the same hard disk format that VMware uses. And we're using VMX as our virtual appliance format, which is the same format that VMware is using. We're going to be standardizing on OVF for appliances going forward, but we're using VMX today because it's the most widely used, and if you go to the appliance repositories, that's what you get. So we designed this, much the same way that OpenOffice is designed to read Excel documents and Microsoft Word documents. You got to do that if you're going to play here. And so very much we see VirtualBox, going back to VirtualBox, which has its own native file format, but now imports and exports VMDK, and we're actually using the same VMDK code between VirtualBox and XVM Server. That was actually something we took from VirtualBox and put it into XVM Server. So more and more, that's going to become our kind of lingua franca for how we use the VMDK. Both VirtualBox and XVM Server take advantage of the both the Intel and the AMD virtualization instruction sets. And in fact, XVM Server is really designed to natively run in that environment. So it runs on servers that have HVM compatible CPUs, do Windows and things like that that aren't para-virtualized. So we are taking advantage of that, those technologies. But